Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about one of the major problems in World of Warships Legends, and I have what I think is pretty near a perfect illustration of that problem. A game featuring the Tier 7 Italian tech tree battleship Vittorio Veneto. We're going to analyze what the red team does on this game because this is going to result in a terrible blowout in the blue team's favor, which I normally don't like to show on YouTube. But the reasons that this game is a blowout for the Reds are going to become clear right from the start. And I think it helps us discuss one of the major problems with this match. Now, take a look at the minimap. We've spawned south of the Charlie Cap, so we're pushing toward that flank in an attempt to play it. And we get all three of the enemy battleships spotted. You can see that they're between Alpha and Bravo. And what they're going to do is converge together, basically in a single grid square, along with the entire rest of their team, except for this Eastern Dragon and the Z-23. They are the only surface ships on this side of the map. The Z-23 is charging straight into the cap. He's spotted. He's being shot at by our friendly DD. We're going to shoot at him, and then we've got a cruiser and another battleship somewhere behind us that can shoot at him as well. So the destroyer, this exposed this early on in the game, right in the open, in front of 4 enemy ships. Obviously, he's not going to be floating for much longer, and he's going to go down as first blood. And then all we have to do is take a simple look at the minimap now. And we'll see that both of the remaining enemy destroyers are both headed toward the Alpha Cap, and literally the Eastern Dragon is the only surface ship on this side of the map. That means the enemy has completely given up map control. In order to have map control, you need your battleships spread out, because you need your battleships to be in a place where their guns threaten the broadsides of the enemy team. And you can't do that if they're all in one single grid square. So I, in my battleship, can push into the Charlie Cap in complete confidence that I'll be able to flip it with no opposition, unless the Eastern Dragon comes around the corner and starts shooting, in which case we should be able to make quick work of him because he is a Tier 6 cruiser with not a lot of armor. Or if the enemy CV wants to fly his planes over here, but for whatever reason he's attacking the blue battleship in the Bravo Cap. And you can see now that the red battleships are basically in the same grid square on the same part of the map, north of the Alpha Cap, not being too effective. This is sort of the major problem in this game, a problem of positioning. This game is not really about how accurate can I make my ship and how much DPM can I put into the enemies. That's not really what you should be thinking about when you're playing it if your intention is to become a good player. What you should be thinking about, regardless of what class you're playing, is where can you put your ship on the map in order for it to be most effective. And the reason I'm sort of singling out battleships as a class in this discussion is because battleships have a much bigger impact on the outcome of a game than a lot of people give them credit for. I think the reason most people think battleships aren't all that vital to the outcome of a game is because people play battleships improperly. In my mind, what they're thinking about, or at least what they appear to be thinking about, is how many accuracy inspirations can I stack on top of my commander? Because my game plan in a battleship is simply push out a little bit, see where the opposition is, point my bow at the opposition, and then shoot at them repeatedly with my main guns. Maybe I'll reverse a little bit if they shoot back at me, but I'm just going to sit stationary on one side of the map, shooting my guns and hoping that the enemy team will give me broadside. That's how most battleship players tend to play this game, and battleships do seem to be the most popular class as well. You see them in every game, and they usually are the majority of the ships. This game is actually somewhat of an exception to that rule, but it would be even worse if there were more battleships on the red team and they were all in the same area as the battleships that actually exist in this match. In any case, this is a game primarily about positioning, but if we're going to criticize the player base's positioning for the reasons I've already outlined, then it would be good to sort of remember the context and remember what this game actually is. It is a free to play title on console. And as such, I think it is specifically designed, like all of the other wargaming titles that I've played, to be a game where you can get into it fairly easily. You can download the game, you don't have to pay any money. You turn it on, you immediately go into battle against AI, and you start shooting your guns and eventually launching torpedoes at the enemy ships. And that's really all the game teaches you how to do. And because it is a free to play game, it has to be designed in a way where it's going to attract a large number of players. It's got to have some players who are going to be hardcore and willing to spend money on it in order to keep the lights on. But it's also got to have a large contingent of players who maybe don't spend too much money, but play the game fairly regularly and probably fairly casually. And I think that is the reason we see the types of blowouts we're seeing in this particular match. It's because this is a free-to-play title that, on the surface, is just about ships shooting at each other with big guns and sending torpedoes at each other. And that's as much as most people dig into it, which is fine. That's all you really need to know in order to just play the game. But if you want to get good at the game in the long term, then the tactical strategies and nuances and all of the sort of deeper mechanics, you have to have knowledge of all that. And the only way you're really going to get that is by looking outside of the game at content like what you're watching right now on YouTube, or maybe advice on the forums, Reddit, Facebook, the Discord server, that kind of thing. You're going to have to search outside of the game for assistance, most likely, if you want tips to become good. And not everybody is going to do this. In fact, the majority of people are not going to do this. And we live in an era where most online PvP multiplayer games are some kind of first-person shooter, where what really matters is sort of like your reflexes and how quickly and accurately you can get the headshot. That sort of means all you're concerned about is your aim and, how fast you can run around the map, avoiding getting shot by other people, basically. That's not how this game works. It really is not about the accuracy of any of your individual salvos. It's really about where you put your ship on the map. Case in point, we've got this Richelieu doing the typical battleship maneuver of sitting still, bow tanking, and reversing. He had a blue battleship right in front of him shooting at his bow, but we were on his broadside where we were able to do a good significant amount of damage to him. Now imagine if my battleship, which is currently going toward my blue teammate, mostly because of these two battleships over here who would have my broadside if I were spotted. I'm keeping that in mind as I make this push, but luckily none of those two are paying attention to me. They've got their own problems to deal with. But imagine if I was in the same position as the blue battleship pushing into the Richelieu the whole time. Well, we'd both be shooting at him bow on, so if we're shooting AP, we've got to aim at his superstructure and deal a little bit of chip damage. Maybe we switch to HE so we can get more consistent pen damage and also light fires, but either way, we're coming at him from a suboptimal angle where we're going to be able to do minimal damage to him and have to whittle him down over time. That changes drastically if one of us positions our ship on his broadside and is able to take away more HP. The Richelieu goes down, in large part due to the fact that we were able to remove a lot of his HP with the broadside shots, and because of our position on the map and the fact that all the Reds put all of their eggs inside of the Alpha Cap basket, well, they've completely lost control of the map, and they have no chance whatsoever of winning. And I think that is primarily because most people, unfortunately, do not understand that this game is primarily about positioning. Once you understand the basic concepts of positioning and you can employ them in this game, that is when you start to become a good player versus, a casual player who just engages in this game on sort of the surface level. And there's nothing really wrong with that if you are one of those players who engages with the game on a surface level. This is a free to play title, and as such, I think the developer wants a number of those kinds of players playing it. And that's perfectly fine. Everybody's got a different life, everybody's got different values, and a different amount of time they can invest in a video game. So maybe they just want to take a ship out, get some big damage numbers for a couple matches after work, and then they go to bed, they wake up for work the next day, and repeat the process. There's nothing wrong with that, and there's really no fix to it. Players, after all, have agency. They can decide how much they want to invest in this game and whether they even want to learn the tactics and the nuances and all the mechanics that are relevant here. And some of them don't. And that's perfectly fine. There's really nothing to be done about that, except this. If you see a blowout like this, well, you just got to move on to the next game, and you got to try to do your best because you are only one player. So, I hope that this discussion at least gives you something to think about. I'd be curious to know your thoughts in the comments, and maybe we'll follow up on this discussion in a later video. Hope you enjoyed it, though. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.